Mark Thompson came back to his Northern California home after a quick 5-day trip to Nevada, expecting the quiet rhythm of his life to pick up where he left it. His place wasn't just a house site, was a statement, perched on a secluded hill, hugged by oak trees and old stone walls. Mark wasn't some eccentric artist or a tech bro with too much money. He was a grounded guy, a designer who'd spent years crafting a lighting system that turned his property into a living canvas. Solar-powered, backed by a buried battery grid, all of it legal, inspected, and signed off by the county. The lights weren't flashy. They were deliberate soft beams tracing the garden paths, accentuating the terraces, giving the house a warm glow against the night sky. It said, someone lives here, and they mean it. But that night, as Mark drove up the winding private road, something was wrong. From a distance, his hill was swallowed in darkness. No uplights on the olive trees, no glow on the stone paths, just a void where his home should have shimmered like a low ember. He figured a breaker had tripped, maybe a storm had knocked something loose. But as he pulled into the gravel driveway, a feeling settled in his gut. The air wasn't calm, it was interrupted. Inside, the house was a corpse. Fridge thawed, security systems blinking red, thermostat dead. He checked the central array's access panel, and the diagnostic spat out an error he hadn't seen in years. Downline obstruction saw. This wasn't a glitch. Someone had cut his power. Mark didn't lose his cool. He'd built the system himself, dealt with contractors, permits, and nosy neighbors. He knew how to troubleshoot. He opened the underground vault by the driveway where his line tied into the neighborhood grid. The dirt was fresh, tamped down sloppily, like someone had dug it up and tried to cover their tracks. The line was severed, clean, and deliberate. He called the power company, wading through transfers and hold music until a tech confirmed no outages, no maintenance, no record of SerVYC. After some prodding, she hesitated, mentioning a third-party notice logged 3 days ago, marked resolved with no details. Mark pushed for more, and she admitted it was flagged under safety operations, a vague term that could mean anything from a cracked sidewalk to a rewired grid. Nobody had the right to touch his line without notice, unless it was a public hazard, and nobody had called him. By morning, Mark had his emergency generator humming, bringing back the fridge, cameras, and diagnostics. The precision of the cut gnawed at him. It wasn't vandalism. It was surgical. Only the feed line was hit, leaving his property's wiring untouched. His network logs showed the power dropped at 2:41 a.m. 4 nights earlier, with sensors picking up pressure on the soil above the vault. A camera caught 2 unmarked vans parked near the community clubhouse down the hill as shared space for meetings, a gym, and utility nodes. Mark didn't have many neighbors, and he liked it that way. His hill was private, the lots spread out, the kind of place where people minded their own business. But the Homeowners Association, led by Helen Carver, was another story. Helen, a sharp-tongued woman in her 60s, always dressed like she was auditioning for a judge's robe, ran the HOA like her personal fiefdom. She'd hated Mark's lights from day one, claiming they disrupted the hill's character. Once, she filed a complaint about a single uplight's glare hitting the clubhouse's yoga room wall. It was dismissed, but her grudge wasn't. Mark didn't need a signed confession to know Helen was behind the cut. But what he saw next lit a fire in him. That night, driving by the clubhouse, he noticed it glowing like a Vegas casino. Not the usual dim walkway lights, but heavy-duty beams saw beams, were damn close to the mounted on the roof and entrance. The color temperature, the angles, the setupit was his design, but the meters showed they weren't pulling from the city grid. They were using local power, possibly siphoned from his system before the cut. He spotted his battery cell model, his array mounts. They hadn't just copied him. They'd stolen from him, rerouted his energy, and dressed it up as a community upgrade. No notice, no permission, just bureaucracy's smug cover. Mark didn't storm the clubhouse or call Helen out. He went home, documented everything: photos, logs, serial numbers, and made 3 calls. To his lawyer, Sarah Holt, to his contractor, and to the Public Utilities Office. Sarah, who'd helped him navigate permits years ago, sniffed out the scam immediately. She found a dusty clause in the HOA charter allowing emergency energy interventions for supposed public disruptions. It was a loophole, rarely used, and it stank of Helen's handwriting. Sarah demanded the safety report behind the cut. After stonewalling, the HOA sent a flimsy and signed 3-page document whining about intermittent glare and energy bleed, technical nonsense meant to scare bureaucrats. It wasn't just a lie. It was a retroactive alibi. Mark's anger hardened into focus. This wasn't about lights anymore. It was about control. Helen wasn't just annoyed by his style, she was framing him as a problem to be erased. He walked his property, checking every cable, every conduit. Near the clubhouse's utility shed, he found fresh surveyor flags, orange and yellow, tracing a line from his capacitor trench to the share boundary. Someone was prepping to claim his system crossed into HOA land, a move to justify shutting him down. He photographed it all, then found shallow spade marks in the soil, careful, professional, not the work of a random vandal. Instead of shouting, Mark rewired. He rebuilt his lighting system, not to show off, but to saw. Long-throw projectors, hidden in the landscaping, powered by isolated batteries. He tweaked the beam's angles, tested them at dawn when the hill was empty. The new setup wasn't for beauty, it was for presence. Sarah fired off notices to the HOA and utility office, demanding answers. The HOA's response, signed by Helen, was a masterclass in dodging. Vague talk of community standards and preventative action. No admission, no apology. Mark pinned it to his workshop wall, a reminder of their arrogance. That evening, he flipped the switch. Thin white beams sliced across his hill, sharp as a blade. Then projectors from the southern tree-line bathed the clubhouse in cold light. Not blinding, but undeniable, like a spotlight pinning a thief mid-heist. Neighbors texted within minutes, confused, asking why the clubhouse looked like a crime scene. Mark stayed silent. When Helen showed up, flanked by 2 board members, squinting into the beams, she shouted something, expecting a fight. Mark watched from his balcony, letting the light do the talking. It wasn't for her, it was for everyone else, proof he wasn't in VY Cybele. The HOA hit back with a notice about unauthorized high-intensity lighting, citing fake noise complaints and misquoted codes. Sarah countered, pro-VYing Mark's lights were legal, within his property, and below glare limits. The board went quiet for 3 days. Then, at 2:13 a.m., Mark's new infrared sensors pinged. 2 figures crept along the flagged path, one with a spade, the other with a flickering headlamp. They wore maintenance vests with the HOA logo. When they crossed the slope, thin beams snapped on, catching them like deer in headlights. They didn't run, they slunk away, knowing they'd been seen. Pink flags appeared next, signaling an inspection. Mark pulled them, photographed them, and requested a boundary reaffirmation from the county. The HOA had filed a similar request, trying to outmaneuver him. A city technician came, neutral but thorough. Mark showed him the tampering, the rerouted power of the flags. As the tech left, he glanced at the clubhouse and muttered, "They picked the wrong guy to mess with." Then came the first envelope. No sender, just Mark's name. Inside, a sloppy document rambled about hostile illumination and community intimidation. It wasn't official, but it was bold, Helen's passive-aggressive fingerprints all over it. Mark didn't flinch. He upgraded his system again, adding beams that tracked movement, shifting colors and density like a Lee VYing thing. Neighbors crossing his boundary met soft pulses at their feet, not aggressive, just saying, "I see you." The HOA filed another complaint, with doctored photos exaggerating his light's reach. Mark's third-party audit crushed it. Pro-VYing not only his compliance, but the HOA's theft as power had fed the clubhouse during the outage. At the next HOA meeting, Mark walked in unannounced, dropped a folder in front of Helen, and spoke calmly. "This is an audit, proof of tampering, and zoning laws you broke." He left without a word, the room silent. Helen's lips twitched, but she said nothing. Outside, his path lights flared in sequence, punctuating his exit. The HOA didn't stop. A county inspection notice arrived, vague, but mandatory, clearly their doing. Mark let the inspector in, showed every permit, every record. The HOA's consultant tried measuring the boundary line, hinting at a reclassification to shrink Mark's land. Sarah found their appeal to turn his slope into a buffer zone. Mark reported it to the zoning commission, detailing the HOA's overreach. The board was now under state scrutiny. Mark's lights evolved again, modular, motion-sensitive, projecting a subtle strobe above the clubhouse, casting its silhouette into the sky. Neighbors whispered, not angry but curious. Then, a second envelope landed on his porch-off photo of his house from a restricted angle, with a note, "Saw too much light, leaves you exposed, saw." Mark traced it to the clubhouse's shed, logged the trespass, and delivered his own envelope to the HOA. A map of property lines, his in green, theirs in red, with a note, "Saw light reveals. Stay in your lines." Sal. A week later, 3 officers cited him for creating a hostile atmosphere. Helen watched from distance, smug. Mark shut off the perimeter lights, letting the hill go dark. At 2 a.m., motion sensors caught 3 figures at his transformer, planting a tiny transmitter to fake a violation. Mark removed it, photographed it, and reported the HOA to the Regional Building Authority. The fallout was swift. 2 board members quit. The clubhouse closed for repairs. Helen faded from VYEW, her control crumbling. The state's VYEW exposed the HOA's abuses. Mark's lights returned, softer now, warm tones on the paths, a gentle uplight on an oak. Neighbors nodded, asked about his design, no longer pawns in Helen's game. A final letter from the county confirmed his boundaries, with a note, "Your hill. Some lines don't move." Mark didn't gloat. His hill glowed again, not as a weapon, but as a signature. They'd try to bury him in shadows. He answered with light.